The following production is brought to you by the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show.
I just want to take a moment off the top here to pat ourselves on the back and say that the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show should be your go-to destination for Leaf discussion and analysis, because we have been sitting here for months, and I mean months. I'm talking like back in November, saying things like this team is not deep enough. They're still an easy team to play against, especially in the bottom six. The defensive depth is not there. And guess who agreed with us, my friend? Kyle Dubas agreed with us, because fresh off doing an episode yesterday talking about the acquisitions of Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty, the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs turned the NHL upside down today with a flurry of moves and continuing to change the DNA of this hockey team. When was the last time we saw a moment in this league where you had to keep refreshing your Twitter feed because stuff was happening at such a furious pace?
I mean, this all we've been talking about is how this league is just boring and how it's nothing exciting. And this is even though it's not deadline day yet, but holy shit, is this league been turned upside down? And it's incredible, and it's really exciting, and it's exactly what the NHL needs. A bunch of front-running teams doing whatever they can to make their teams better, and by that, creating excitement around the NHL. It's just been absolutely incredible, absolute madness, and this is all we've been asking for, really.
Yesterday, I put my stake in the ground and I said, it's time to give Kyle Dubas a contract extension. Come on. Like, are you not entertained? This dude has stones the size of grapefruits and is interchanging the DNA of this hockey team.
Yeah, but why did it take 7 years to do it? Like that's the problem. It's when did my biggest question with all these trades is, when did he decide he was going to do all this? Because in my opinion, it's about 5 years too late.
Well,
even though I am very excited that it's happening, but I'm just, if I had to knock against it, it would be, when did he decide this, and why is it happening now, and why didn't it happen 3 years ago?
They clearly have had discussions, I'm guessing, in the recent months, looking at the teams that they're going to have to get through come playoff time. And we're talking about Tampa and Boston specifically, and are like, we're not good enough to beat this team. If you look at the moves they've made, and we're going to go through them in a second, and if you read the quotes that Sheldon Keefe in particular gave after practice today, they are clearly prioritizing being a team that's harder to play against and bringing in guys that, like, it's the biggest thing that this core group has been criticized for is not necessarily laying it all on the line and not having that burning desire to win at all costs. And when you look at the quotes coming out of Sheldon Keefe and then coming out of some of the new players' mouths, that's very clearly what they've identified as an intangible that Boston has in their dressing room, that Tampa has in their dressing room, that they didn't necessarily have in theirs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I guess you didn't really know who was available until this time of year, but it's incredible to see, like, just the difference in age on this hockey team. Like, just all of a sudden, every new guy brought in is almost 30 plus years old, and just the age of experience and the type of hockey player that have entered this roster. It's just like, wow, like just wow, just overnight, just a complete culture change. Just wow. That's all I can say.
So let's go through them here chronologically. We found out it was about 4:00 Eastern this afternoon when it was announced that the Leafs had traded Rasmus Sandin to the Washington Capitals for defenseman Erik Gustafsson and the Bruins' first-round pick in 2023. So, which is going to be a high pick, but it's still a first-round pick. There's tons of speculation that pick could still be in play and that he might not be done, which is crazy to think about. But let's talk about the departure of Rasmus Sandin, a guy who at one point in time, I would say, was the highest ranked prospect in the organization. Um, Someone who people looked at as maybe a potential sort of heir apparent to Morgan Riley's role. He had the contract situation going into camp this year. Ended up signing. Has had a really up and down season. He's had nights where he's looked really, really good. And I think at the end of the day, Timothy Liljegren passed him on the organizational depth chart, and they needed to move out his salary, even though he had a small cap hit, but it's something they felt like they had to do.
Yeah, guy, he just couldn't stay. Didn't really do a great job of staying healthy either. Not that that's his fault, but yeah, just couldn't stay healthy. And then you nailed it right on the head. Just Timothy Liljegren at one point in his career looked like he was never going to make it to the NHL, which is going to be a first round bust. So you kind of had two first rounders going head to head from different years, and you're right, Liljegren just beat him out. Just got further ahead on the depth chart and just made him expendable.
The player that they get back in return is Erik Gustafsson, a guy who currently has 38 points on the season, 7 goals, 31 assists. I mean, he's kind of lost in the shuffle because nobody really knows a lot about him, but this is seemingly a good defensive piece. I don't know if they might look at flipping him in a trade coming up based on the trade they made after this one, but this seems like a really nice acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really. I found with this trade, I was more focused on the player going out than the player coming in. Obviously, Gustafsson's offensive stats are nice, but he's been a guy who's bounced around the entire league. He was with Montreal when they beat the Leafs in the bubble. He's been with Chicago. He's been with Washington. I'm pretty sure he's been with at least 2 other franchises. So kind of just another journeyman guy who, if he does fit in the lineup, can maybe fit it on a second PP role, but he's going to be down in that bottom 6, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, once we talk about the next trade, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out on the decor.
Pretty sure he scored a hat trick against the Leafs earlier this season for the Capitals. So
he did.
Interesting. Like they're really, really, really adding to their defensive. They've got 9 NHL ready defensemen.
Well, it's
at their disposal right now.
I mean, they go get. Let's talk about the rest of the trades, and then we'll get into that.
So this next trade, to me, this one is so significant because Pierre Engvall is a guy that we have talked about so much on this show. To me, he is the poster boy for the old school Kyle Dubas philosophy. The softest guy in the National Hockey League. Like, they don't come softer and easier to play against than Pierre Engvall. Yes, he's got some offensive upside. He scores a nice goal here and there. Pretty good skater. But when you look at a team like Boston, and you're going to throw a guy like Pierre Engvall out there, it doesn't exactly inspire confidence. And that noise you hear right now is the river of tears from the smart guys that is because the smart guy MVP just got dealt to the New York Islanders. This is the ultimate shifting of the tide to me, is moving this particular player. Like, I don't know about you, but this guy was like I said, the poster boy for the old school Kyle Dubas way of building a hockey team.
Engvall was he was almost like a mini Jake Gardiner, mini William Nylander in terms of being polarizing. But he was definitely a whipping boy more often than not. And it like we were going through what the lines were going to look like after they got Lafferty, talking about the bottom 6, and we were trying to piece it together and just didn't make any sense. So seeing Engvall go out the door is not surprising to me at all. The most interesting part about this trade to me is the fact that it was a Lou Lamoriello, Kyle Dubas trade. Yes. Not so much the players, like, see you later, Engvall, like, bye, third rounder, whatever. I just found that the general managers making a deal to be the most interesting part of that trade.
There's always been the war between the analytics crowd and the eye test crowd. And this trade And the next one coming up is the eye test winning over the analytics. Like, because Pierre Engvall, like, they love him. They all love him. Anyone who is like right into the numbers loves this guy. But he just, like I said, I've seen enough. We know what he is. He's a soft hockey player. And I mentioned it on our episode over the weekend that there was talk on the radio last week about how he seems to be like, he doesn't like the physical stuff. He really gets it. He doesn't like it. And it's a cultural shift of, we want guys in this dressing room that are going to like lay it all on the line to win. And I just don't think Pierre Engvall is one of those guys.
No, I think more the people who love Engvall just, I think they just kind of chose to love him because the anti-analytic crowd just hated him so much. So that was just a reason for them to love him so much. Did they really love him? Like, did they really, or did they just like bringing up his name and telling us how good he was, even though we thought he sucked because of his numbers? Like, whatever. We're not going to miss that guy at all. I don't think anybody is really going to miss him at all. He made no sense going forward for this hockey team. Just an average, below average NHL hockey player. Quite frankly, I couldn't stand watching him play hockey, and I'm really happy he's not a Maple Leaf anymore.
The Maple Leafs get a 3rd round pick in return for Pierre Engvall, and literally seconds after that trade came down, it was announced that the Leafs had traded a 3rd round pick to the Vancouver Canucks, and the prodigal son is returning to Toronto, Luke Schenn. You have been hot and cold on the acquisition of Luke Schenn. Again, this is incredibly symbolic. The smart guys, there are some upset people on Twitter right now over the acquisition of Luke Schenn and how bad his numbers are and how he's not good and whatever. But as I've said a couple of times now, this is a cultural shift. They're looking for a specific type of hockey player. Luke Schenn leads the NHL in hits. Luke Schenn is a guy who is not afraid to drop the gloves. And this is clearly something that they're prioritizing. And I have something that I would like to say to anyone who's crying about the acquisition of Luke Schenn. Anything that pushes Justin Holl out of the top 6 defensemen and into the press box is a win in my book. And if I'm going to look at Justin Holl or Luke Schenn, I'm going to take Luke Schenn all day because of what I just said. The guy's leading the National Hockey League in hits, and you need that in a postseason series. You don't need Justin Holl doing Justin Holl nonsense out there every time he's on the ice.
Yeah, I mean, I was hot and cold. I'm still kind of hot and cold. Like, am I happy? The type of hockey player he is, like, yeah, that's great. I mean, of course I'm happy about that. But at the end of the day, the guy can't skate. Like, I know he can hit. I know he can fight. But we're talking about a 7th defenseman here. So I'm not going to get too excited about this. I am happy about the whole culture change thing. But the moves today weren't so much about who they acquired. It was more about what the message was. Like, I think everyone they acquired, I was like, kind of like, cool, whatever. But it was just like all these moves just sent a message. And now you're looking at the decor being like, they had 5 spots taken up and they have 1 available. And they just went out and add 2 guys for 1 spot. So now they have 3 defensemen fighting for 1 spot. So it's just going to be very interesting to see who draws in. Like, what's your priority? They seem to love Holl. Like, for some reason, this team just loves Justin Holl.
No, Sheldon Keefe loves Justin Holl.
Gustafsson.
I don't know how you can look at getting a Gustafsson or a Schenn, though, and continue to. And you cannot tell me with a straight face that Justin Holl is better than Erik Gustafsson. You can't do it.
We'll see. I'm not going to pretend I'm a big Gustafsson and I know what Luke Schenn is. Luke Schenn played for the Tampa Bay Lightning when they won the Stanley Cups. You know where he was? In the press box. So it's, like, it's not. We're not bringing in a stud here. We're bringing in a guy who just brings a different impact when he is playing, but like he's not a massively impactful player. But I think if you're going for more offensive minded, it's Gustafsson, and then it's going to be Holl versus Schenn in terms of who's going to be the stay at home guy on the 3rd pair, because there's literally 1 spot available. Like, there's 5 spots taken up that are solid, and there's going to be 3 guys battling out for 1 spot, which I guess what everyone loves to say, inter competition's the best best way to go about creating the best lineup. But it's going to be interesting, and I'm really happy they went out and got those guys. But to me, it was less about what they got today and more about the message of like, holy shit, this is a culture change. Like with 20 games left, this is wild. This is an overhaul almost.
Do you worry about chemistry?
No.
I don't either, because I think these guys, because what we've been saying, I think these guys, the guys they're bringing in are not necessarily super skilled hockey players. They're guys that play a certain style that they felt they were missing. So if you were bringing in like a skilled guy, then I think, oh, he needs time to acclimate with Matthews and Mark. Like the one guy that they got that I would think would need time to acclimate is Ryan O'Reilly, and he's been here for over a week now, over a week now. Yeah. So I don't think it's anything to get super concerned about. Do you think he's done? I don't think he's done. I'm seeing a lot of. We just talked about all the defensemen they have now. The whole situation with Matt Murray on LTIR is still very like shrouded in mystery.
So the most confusing situation ever. Like trying to understand that situation from multiple different sources is exhausting. It's literally exhausting.
It's going to be really telling to see what happens between now and Friday with Matt Murray, because that's great that you went out and got all these players, but you're a groin pull away from having Joe Woll start in front of this team. And I know that theoretically you go and you bolster your defense to help if that situation arises, but I don't know, man. I think it's going to be really telling how much faith they have in Matt Murray as we get closer and closer to Friday.
Well, like I want to ask Leaf fans, like, how confident were you with the last 2 seasons going into the playoffs with Jack Campbell? Like, you're telling me that you think Jack Campbell was better than Ilya Samsonov right now? I know he could get hurt, but like, they've been in this situation for the past 2 seasons, and they've still been 1 game away from getting there. Like, I don't know if I don't understand. Like, I don't know.
I don't know if it's Samsonov. Like, it was kind of like what I said to you yesterday. Samsonov's the number 1 guy. Like, even if they don't do anything and Matt Murray stays and they bring him back off LTIR, he's gonna have to earn his way back in. That, like, Samsonov's the guy.
Yeah.
I think the concern comes from, like I said, you're a groin pull away from
Rob,
Joe Woll.
If Andre Vasilevsky pulls his groin game 1, that's a guaranteed series win for the Maple Leafs. Like, it's that's a good point. Every team is in this situation. I don't get why we have to go out and trade a first-round pick for Jonas Korpisalo. Like, very rarely. Like, I think the Bruins are the only team that are in this situation that actually have 2 goalies that they can rely on. But you're telling me the Rangers are confident if Shesterkin pulls his groin? Like, they're not going to go out and break their backs to go get a depth option that's probably not even going to do anything anyway. Like, I just think this is just... I just don't get this conversation about getting another goalie. Like, you have your number 1 goalie. If he gets injured, like, you're kind of screwed. It'd be nice to have Murray, but like, if the Tampa Bay Lightning's, if Vasilevsky gets injured in that series, the Leafs win the series. So it's like, I don't know. Like, there's only so much you can do to help that situation. Like, you can't just go out and fix it. Like, it's almost an unfixable situation. You just gotta put your hands together like this and just hope for the best.
Right. What do you think spurned this along? Because you've mentioned a couple times, like, why did it take 5 years to get here? Why did it take 5 years to realize this team is too easy to play against and we need to start loading up with some character guys? I think part of it is definitely timing, because a lot of these guys became available right now. And I do think the circumstance of Kyle Dubas is being on the last year of his contract definitely played a role into it. You'd be foolish not to. But like, why now are they going, we got to do this. We got to go all in.
I'd be interested to see if you agree with me on this, but I think it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like,
Ryan, I think it's the I think, the Lightning are the first like obstacle they have to get over. But even if you somehow get past the Lightning, guess who you got next? And the Rangers go and get Patty Kane today.
Yeah.
So it's like the we talked about it yesterday, the arms race in the Eastern Conference. And I think, like, if you add that together with the other circumstances, like I just said about Dubas's job and what have you, I think it just led to this.
Yeah, and I think maybe it just took all those years to finally realize that like you had to do this, and he knows his job's on the line. That adds to it, but I just think like those first couple of years when they lost those series, like you still kind of held on the fact that the core was young and then they were going to learn their lessons or whatever. But since like you watched Montreal, you watched Tampa Bay, you realize that this core by themselves just aren't good enough. And with Sandin and Engvall going out, those are two guys that have kind of grown that are in the same situation where they're still trying to learn how to win. I think they really tried to axe as many players like that, like learning lesson type players. Like they wanted to go out and get veterans who may have not have won anywhere, but guys who just are older and have been around longer and play that playoff style and just help change that losing learning culture that they've been going through every single year. Because every single year they lose in game 7. It's a learning lesson, but like, there's no more time for learning lessons. Like if you can't have Pierre Engvall on your roster learning a lesson this year. Like,
No,
like
you
it's
can't.
like, no, you got to eliminate lesson learning. It's school's over. Like it's time to take the test and pass.
I also think that they know how fragile. It'd be interesting to see the role that Jason Spezza is playing in all of this, sitting beside Kyle Dubas, of having insight into what's in that dressing room and how these guys think and what the type of character guys that they need. Because I also think that part of this, it might be to insulate the top guys. Like at the end of the day, the top guys are going to have to be the ones that lead them to the promised land. But we talked about it before about how their psyches are so fragile. And when you bring in guys who are going to go balls to the wall to do everything they can to try and win, it helps take the pressure off them. And it'll help in moments where things get tough to sort of keep them going and not shut down and not go, oh no, here we go again. Like we're on our way out again. Another thing too, Ryan, we're going to go to your favorite topic here. You know who all these acquisitions really help? Matthew Nyes.
Yeah.
Because now you can take Matthew Nyes straight out of the Frozen Four in April, and you can drop him on the third or fourth line, and there is no expectations that this guy comes in and is a difference maker right away. You can drop him in. You can see it's a sink or swim type thing. I think if he sinks, I don't think anybody is going to go, oh, well, Matthew Nyes. Everyone will be kind of like, well, he's a kid, whatever. They tried it, and you can take him out and you can pick a guy back.
Well, you're not really putting that at this point. You're not even putting him in a sinker. If you're throwing him on the first line, second line, expecting him to contribute offensively, that's a sink or swim situation. But if you're throwing him on the third line, I don't think there's much of a sink or swim element to it. It's just go out there and try to be effective,
Yeah, man. It's been
what
a
day.
long
This is
time.
like this day has been absolutely insane. Like one of the best days to be a Leaf fan in a long time.
We're setting a record here for consecutive episodes.
Yeah, well, hey, buddy, strike when that iron's hot, baby.
Yeah, you got to strike when that iron's hot. We're just, I'm so happy. Like I'm so happy. Listen, even if they lose, I said this yesterday, I'll say it again. Even if they lose in the first round of Tampa, but even if they do, I'm not going to begrudge. Like this is a general manager who's going for it. And you and I think we've been have shit all over the NHL for being a brutal product that lacks entertainment. And today, Kyle Dubas just said, screw it, and took the league and turned it upside down.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that Kyle's really doing, like I'm not in the camp that you are in. I don't think he should get a deal because of these trades. But one thing he is doing, he's really just putting it all on the players. Like this is, I think every single season you could look at him and be like, well, you didn't have enough. You had Pierre Engvall out there, like in a prominent role. Like what do you expect? And I think he's just really putting it on the players now. Like you make all these moves, especially to appease everyone who's been chirping their lack of toughness and their lack of character and playoff style hockey. Like they're appeasing all of us in that sense. Kyle is appeasing all of us. So he's really putting it on the players, and they're going to look And I think the core is going to look really stupid if they go out in the first round this year. And it's all in the players.
I sent you a tweet earlier that was a quote from Jake McCabe after practice today. And he says, they said, what are your priorities now that you're a member of the Maple Leafs? And he says, make life hard on the other team's top players. Just do whatever it takes to win every night. Block shots, do whatever it takes.
I thought I forget what show I was listening to because I was trying to get as much reaction as I could. I think it was Overdrive, and they were talking about how this impacts Morgan Riley. And I thought it was a very interesting conversation how adding kind of, and most of the guys they've added other than Gustafsson are pretty stay-at-home, shut-down individuals. And now if you throw Brody out there with McCabe, like there's the guys going against Kucherov every single shift.
Yeah.
And Mo can kind of take more of the role of playing against some weaker forward pairs. Not that there's any weak lines on the Lightning, but just kind of the pressure it takes off of Morgan Riley, adding a guy like McCabe and adding some depth at the bottom. And another thing I'll say too is I think today really showed how impressive and what an amazing story Timothy Liljegren's been.
Oh, 100% agree.
Like, dude, this guy was irrelevant, bro. Like he was a joke. Like he was almost joke at one point.
Yeah, and it was years of when is this guy gonna take the leap? When is this guy gonna take the leap?
And all of a sudden he's not coming out of the lineup. He's in the top 4.
Yeah,
I'd take Giordano out of the lineup before I take him out.
Ryan, I sat here with you like 2-3 weeks ago and I did my defensive depth chart and he was number 1.
I know, and I was defending Sandin like an idiot.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think there's some indication too that like the relationship between Sandin and the organization had kind of soured a little bit after the contract situation. And it's just move on, get a fresh start. I tell you what though, man, with these defensive acquisitions they made today, if I see Justin Holl in the top 6 defense, I want a paternity test.
Yeah, they love
between
it,
Sheldon Keefe and Justin Holl because Justin Holl is Sheldon Keefe's son. I'm sorry if you just brought in 2 more guys that you can add to the mix here. We don't need to see Justin Holl anymore, Sheldon. We're waving the white flag. We don't need to see him anymore.
Yeah. And I think, even though what I said about Luke Schenn earlier, like it is pretty cool seeing him come full circle.
Remember when they drafted him and Berkey was like, this guy's good, could be our captain in a few years.
And when you really think about that situation, it was extremely unfair the position he was put in.
Yes. He had way too much put on his shoulders at a young age.
This guy was never going to be a number 1 defenseman. He was just a rough and tough hockey player who like, and it just, he got put in just a garbage situation with this organization.
He's going to have his first game back at Scotiabank Arena. The ovation for him is going to be, it's going to blow the roof up. All this guy has to do for the rest of the season is lay a few big hits and drop the mitts a couple times. And this guy's set for life. They'll throw the alumni jacket on him and he'll be going and doing signings with all the other ex-Leafs that they keep in their alumni group. Like this, he is the roof is going to come off that place.
Yeah. And it's really just going to be a battle. Like I think, I mean, they may, who knows what, I can't even begin to understand what's going on in Kyle Dubas' head right now. Like, we don't know what else is coming. There could be more trades. There could be no more trades, whatever. But as of today, if those 3 guys are battling for that 6th spot, then like there you go. Like, it's just, I don't know who's going to fit in, but you have 20 games to figure it out. So we'll see.
You look at it, and so in closing, I think the main takeaway here is they've taken a look at their depth guys on the roster, and they've said if you're not a guy that is going to lay it all out on the line out there, you're gone. And Pierre Engvall is the poster boy for that. That I cannot state enough how huge I think the moving on from Pierre Engvall, because he was a Dubas guy. Like he was with the Marlies when they won the Calder Cup. Sheldon Keefe coached him. They brought him in. They gave him a contract extension. They really believed that this was a guy that could eventually sort of evolve into a top 6 winger position, and he never did, because he is, when you look up soft hockey in the dictionary, you see that guy's face.
And I don't blame them for thinking that either. Like, how could you not look at that guy? I'm sure I've never stood beside him, but I'm sure if you stand beside the man, he's huge. He can skate fast in a straight line. Like, I totally get it, but it's just, have you like? I'm just trying to think, like, what other contending team has ever done this? Like, it's just
like
completely just overhauled their roster.
Yeah,
like it's
at the deadline.
Insane.
At the deadline, too.
Yeah.
It's not like this is like an off season where it's like, oh, Kyle Dubas, like they're gonna see a whole new team. No, this is like 2 weeks out from the trade deadline. Like, rewind a few weeks ago, like pre All-Star break, and watching that team with Austin Matthews injured, and you and I sitting there wanting to pull our eyeballs out of our head, being like, this is brutal. Now, fast forward, you're right. It's a complete overhaul. It's insane.
It's absolutely insane. I've never seen anything like it. And I think it's extra impactful because it's the Leafs as well. Like, it's just, if there was any team that needed a culture flip going into the playoffs, like this team is number 1 on that list.
You have said multiple times leading up to this, he needs to have his Alex Anthopoulos 2015 moment, and he's having
uncanny
it right now.
How similar it is. It's uncanny, because Alex said the same thing. Alex said that he didn't really understand the intangibles until later into his tenure, even though he was already gone, so he didn't really care. But just it's uncanny how similar it is.
All right, buddy. We're gonna get out of here. I don't know when we'll be back. We could be back tomorrow. Like, it's the way Kyle Dubas is moving and shaking.
This episode may never see the may
don't
never
even
see
joke
YouTube.
about that. Don't even joke about that. We just did 32 minutes. Don't even joke about that.
Yeah.
So, as I said off the top, we should be your go-to source for Toronto Maple Leafs discussion and analysis, because apparently Kyle Dubas shared our view of this roster as well. So if you want to jump along for the ride, we got 22 games left. Then we're heading into the postseason. Hit that like and subscribe button below. What else should they do, Ryan?
Spread the word. Tell your family and your friends and your dogs.
We really appreciate it. We'll see you guys when we see you. Let's be honest.